We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and we're going to talk about something with the importance of family and family stories. And my guest today, Ruth Warnick, is going to explain things. Ruthanne Warnick is going to explain things. Ruthanne, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks,
And
Neil.
family stories. I mean, I think about it when you have these family experiences, when you take people on excursions. Like when I get to take my kids to different places that they've never been to before, and these experiences, and see their eyes light up and they're all together as a family. It's something that I'll never forget. And that's all about what you mean with, having these family stories, is things that when I grew up, my father who passed away, when he would take me to the Cleveland Cavalier basketball games, and I talked about that when I spoke at his funeral. These things will never ever leave my mind. They're memories forever. And is that where you're kind of going in direction of what we're going to talk about, Vivian?
Yeah, so actually what you're saying, Neil, is these create experiences for your family that connect the generations. So you spoke about your father and how you went to, your experiences that you had with your dad, and now you're creating these experiences for your children. So those are things that you would share to connect the generations. It's a combination of family history, family stories, family experiences, even life lessons that you can share from past generations that you can pass down to future generations, because we all have experiences and they're not always all fun like vacations. We go through different challenges in our lives. So how can we turn that also into wisdom, which essentially it is? So it's all about using all of those experiences from one generation to the next, and how can we use them to really, it's about connecting the generations, because it creates this sense of belonging to those who came before and those who will come after you.
So connecting the generations. So you're looking at three types of generations. Even sometimes it could be a fourth. You could have a great great grandmother, not just a great a grandmother, a great grandmother, great great. So that you're looking at all the generations, so you can pass down information from one group to the other. Oh, my father's father, when I talk to my kids about my father's dad or my father's mother, and have those conversations. Is that kind of the direction we want to go in passing down information generations and things like that? I remember when I would tell my kids bedtime stories about my dad's dog, my Count, and how he would steal pies. And this is the stuff my father taught me and did bedtime stories with me. So these kind of experiences connect the generations, right?
They do, and sharing that. So when you talk about that experience that you had as far as bedtime stories and that sort of thing, there's another dimension to it as well. Because how did that make you feel? Right? It made you feel that you were cared for, you were loved, and that's a feeling that you also want to pass down. At the same time, it's sharing about your father. It's sharing about his love and how important that was, and it's sharing his values, that he set aside that time specifically for you. So it has multiple dimensions to it. It's not just a memory. Again, I go back to it's an experience, but it also shares about character. And I'll tell a quick story about my husband, who learned something from his dad. And they were in a situation, I won't tell the full story here, but his father did the right thing. Somebody was humiliated at a meeting, a child, and so the child and his parent left. And my father-in-law leaned over to my husband when he was a 10-year-old and said, we're going with them. And he did the right thing. So when my husband shares that story with our kids and eventually our grandkids, he's saying, this is who your grandfather was. He did the right thing. He taught me this lesson, and I remember that. And that's why that is a strong value for me, meaning my husband, that he wants to make sure he models for our children as well. So that's just an example of a story that's also an experience that also has a little bit of family history in it all at the same time.
And what is your mission to talk about this? Because I think it's important. I think the word excursion, which is important, or having, I'd rather spend money on experiences than spend money on, certain things that just will pass away. This stuff will stay on forever. And some of these experiences that I have been able to experience with my children in the last couple months, the stuff I'll never forget. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have did those before, and I had to have a wake up call to do those things and then pass on those different things. And you bring up this experience, but what makes this mission so important to you, of why you do it?
The what I have found to be the most common thing that people say to me right out of the gate is, I regret that I didn't ask more questions. I regret that I didn't know my grandmother more, or I regret that I didn't get the stories or the traditions. And so the regret, biggest piece, the one that comes up immediately when I'm talking to people. And the reason that it's so important to take the action is because we don't know in a moment when we lose them, that regret piece comes in. And so just like we might regret that maybe we didn't get enough stories from our parents or grandparents, our children will regret the same thing for us if we don't take action now and become the link. So again, it creates that sense of belonging, that you belong to something that to people, I should say, not to something, but to people in your family who already lived, who are living now, and who haven't maybe even been born yet. So the greatest value that I bring to people is, I don't create the stories already exist. The greatest value that I bring is helping people get it done. That's the procrastination. I meant to do it. Someday I'm going to get to it. And then they have this regret. It's the taking action part that is really where I come into the picture. Let me help you get it done.
All right. So where can we find more information on you, learn more about you? Where can people go?
My website is capturethejourney.com, and you will always find there ways to reach me. We can schedule a legacy call to talk about any project that you might have in mind. You'll always be able to find any upcoming workshops that I have there, as well as I have a free download currently, 7 no-tech, low-tech ways to capture family stories starting today. So if you just go to capturethejourney.com, you'll always find what's happening with me.
Oh, wow. I'm going through some really poignant conversations, and thank you for bringing things up I never brought up on the show. So thanks again, Ruthanne.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Neil. Really
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.